Sejam bem-vindos a mais um vídeo do O Vasco e hoje temos um vídeo diferente, um vídeo altamente chocante. Foi um vídeo que eu encontrei no TikTok, vários clipes, e depois reparei que no YouTube tinha literalmente o podcast deste senhor. E então, muito resumidamente para tu perceberes o contexto, este senhor foi preso injustamente e ficou detido numa prisão em Camboja. E para quem não sabe, Camboja fica mais ou menos ali ao pé da Venezuela e da Tailândia, mais ou menos ali ao redor. E foi preso injustamente e ele conta coisas muito chocantes que acontecem, nomeadamente ser viúvo, ver tortura, ver imensas coisas que nesta prisão geralmente até está associado porque é uma prisão muito, muito má mesmo. Mas nós vamos ouvir, sem mais demoras, porque este vídeo vai ser longo. Vamos lá começar.
Ian Muldoon, welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much, Ali.
You are an Australian citizen
O senhor
who
parece
endured one of the
senhor
most
muito
harrowing
triste mesmo.
experiences imaginable. Many people who have gone through what you have don't make it out alive. You were wrongfully detained in a Cambodian prison, one of the most brutal and lawless places on earth, where you witnessed constant murder, torture, and sexual violence on a scale that defies belief. You saw a dozen men beaten to death before your eyes, heard the screams of people being sexually brutalized, violated in the darkness, and was forced to survive in a world where bribery determined who lived, who suffered, and who didn't make it out at all. But you didn't just witness the horror, you lived it, repeatedly gang raped.
Antes de continuarmos, eu vi este senhor, o entrevistador, eu não o conheço muito bem, mas ele foi altamente criticado pelo título que utilizou, porque de facto é um título que acaba por diminuir um bocadinho o senhor que está aqui, e eu acho que a intenção não era essa, e vês pelos comentários muito negativos, depois tiveste tempo de ir lá ao outro vídeo, ver e vais ver que as pessoas não gostaram muito do título que foi utilizado. Mas eu acho que este vídeo também serviu para ajudá-lo, não tenho bem a certeza. Mas vamos tentar perceber. Desculpem lá esta interrupção, era para terem essa noção.
Extorted, abandoned by your own government, and left to rot in a system fueled by corruption and
Pois, essas
violence.
questões.
At a time in your life where you were already facing tragedy. This is the kind of story which even Hollywood screenwriters would struggle to conjure up. But today, you are here to tell your story and blow the whistle on some of the worst human rights abuses imaginable. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Take us back to the beginning. Where does your story begin?
My mum had just passed away 6 months prior. You know, she died in front of me. I literally had the mobile phone up there on loudspeaker, counting the compressions and doing the CPR. The ambulance officer lady was on the phone, was counting me in until the ambulance got to her place. And then my relationship, fell apart. And then I decided that I wanted to go on a holiday.
A relação dele acabou,
Clear my
também acabou
head,
por morrer.
try and reassess what was happening with my life. And then stayed in Thailand for a while and then decided that I was going to go to Vietnam firstly.
Ok, porque ele estava nos arredores de Camboja.
Changed my ticket to go to Cambodia, which was obviously a mistake. Yeah.
Meu Deus.
So before we dive
Estes
into
países temos de ter
the
muito
things that
cuidado,
happened,
pessoal.
what were the moments that led up to where your life turned upside down? What were you doing in Cambodia? How did you get into trouble?
Okay, so I was just in Phnom Penh. I'd just gotten there, still trying to work out the currencies, from Khmer Real and transferring from American dollars.
Ok. Pois.
And I literally walked down to a bar in the early evening, and decided to go and have a beer. Wasn't really going for a drink. I just
Foi
wanted
beber uma
to go and
cerveja
have
ao
a
bar.
beer. Got into the bar, which is only a couple 100 meters down from my hotel on the same side. And then again, my first mistake was there was I ordered a beer and there was a cowbell there. And I rang the cowbell.
Ok, é sino que eles tocam.
For all the drinks in the people in the bar.
Porquê que ele tocou o sino? É isso que eu não percebo.
People in the bar at the time, which wasn't a major concern because everything's very, very cheap over there. But that was my first mistake.
Pronto, ele tinha lá um sininho qualquer, tocou, não percebi porquê, e teve que pagar uma rodada a todos, mas era barato, até aqui está tudo bem.
Definitely.
What happened from that moment on?
Well, I think.
Mas pode ter também chamado a atenção por causa disso, não?
Well, obviously this
Ver um estrangeiro ali.
Australian guy's got money. I finished my beer. I then went and bought a Jack Daniels and Coke. And my second mistake was to leave that glass on my table and go to the bathroom.
Left it unattended.
Yeah, I'd left it unattended. That's
Deixa lá
correct.
beber.
What happened to the drink?
It definitely was spiked with something.
Okay, so your drink was spiked. When you came back, you must have drank that then, and then what happened?
Yeah, I didn't even get a quarter of the way through the Jack
Wow, some
Daniels and
strong
Coke.
stuff.
Yeah.
Tu não bebeu muito e
Started getting
mesmo assim
migraines,
sentiu.
which I never get. Never, you know, and then blurred vision and that tunnel vision comes in and everything's kind of starting to get foggy and dark around your face or your eyesight. Got up and said to the bar lady that I wasn't feeling well at all, and then wanted to pay the bar bill. And because I hadn't worked out the currency, she said that
Ela não tinha trocado o
I
dinheiro,
didn't
então não
have
conseguiu.
money. But she said that just a couple of doors down there was a Smile Mart where I could get some money out of an ATM machine. And as I walked out of the bar, two gentlemen followed me out of the bar. By this stage, I was very unstable on my feet. And then got in and tried to put my card into the ATM a fair few times.
Tens aqui as imagens dele depois.
Was that unsteady on my feet, I fell forward and protected my face with
Partiu
one
aquilo.
hand and then fell forward and my other hand hit the glass.
Porra, mas porquê é que ele foi preso, meu? Ainda não estou a perceber.
So I was so incoherent that I walked out of there and they followed me, and my hotel was only another 50 metres down the road.
Mas a questão é que eu não estou a perceber. Ele ia levantar dinheiro, é isso? Para haver uma troca de moeda. Talvez, isso. Então ele teoricamente não pagou neste momento. Ele foi para o hotel, é isso que está a acontecer. Porque às vezes o inglês dele...
And by that stage I'd been drinking all day, you know, or all night. Got into the hotel, and that's where they stopped because they're not actually allowed to get into the hotel. Now, I don't know whether I got myself up to my room by myself or someone actually helped me up there.
So you just don't remember it?
No, not at all. Not at all. And then, you know, I woke up in the morning and I was still really unsteady on my feet. I still had that headache lingering and like a brain fog.
Mas o que
I could
aconteceu?
still remember bits and pieces. And remembered that I had to go to the bar and pay the bill because I hadn't paid the bill yet.
Ok. Pronto, era aí
So
com esse ponto que eu
I
estava a
got some money
tentar.
out of the safe, walked past where the incident happened at the Smile Mart with the ATM, went down and paid the bar bill, and then, you know, walked back again. There was no problem. Walked back again to the hotel, stayed a couple more days in the hotel, and
Então
then
pagou.
went from there, and a car picked me up and took me up to Baden Bong, which is about a 3-hour drive. Yeah. And
Cab,
then from
percebi
Baden
copo.
Bong, I stayed there for another 5 days.
Deixa-me fazer aqui uma coisa. Deixa-me fazer por aqui as legendas, porque às vezes eu não percebo o que é que ele quer dizer. Ok. Dá para aumentar isto?
And
Percebes mais ou
then
menos.
went from Baden Bong up to Siem Reap to see the sights like Angkor Wat.
Eu tentei tirar as
Esta
publicidades,
é a
pessoal.
banca do
Desculpem lá.
futuro, com a qual pode fazer conversões
vídeo grande.
cambiais instantâneas.
For another 5 or 6 days there.
Okay, so you go to Thailand, you go to sort of Cambodia eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty early on in your trip, you get spiked at the bar. You
It
go
was the second day.
Wow. So the second day in Cambodia,
Yeah.
your drink gets spiked. You have an
Okay,
incident
agora,
at the
pronto.
ATM. You can't really remember. But then sort of off you go on your trip. You go back to the bar and you go and pay. Then what happened? I mean, how did your life get turned upside down from an event that you've moved on from?
Well, I thought nothing of it. Nothing was said. I walked past the place where the Smile Mart where the incident happened. Nothing was said there. Nothing was said by the bar lady. And I literally spent a couple more days there and then got in a car and went to Baden Bong. Spent 5 days in Baden Bong.
Epá, isto é complicado, mas eu tinha dado o get the fuck out, vamos lá admitir. Então ele parte do multibanco, ao fim não é? Quem não sabe o que aconteceu, partiste o multibanco, pelo que eu percebi, não pagaste, mas depois pagaste. O que é que vai acontecer?
Then I got a
Estou a
boat
perceber.
up to Siem Reap.
Aqueles senhores que estão a segui-lo,
Spent another 5 or 6 days there and then was ready to go home. I was only meant to be there for, I think it was 16 days. So no changing of flights or nothing like that. When I got to the airport, put my luggage on the plane, went through, handed the custom agent my passport,
Ai,
and then he
apanharam-no
said,
na
yeah,
aí.
you've got a black mark against your name on your passport or a black flag. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on. And he's got my passport, and then he's taken me into the customs office.
Puseram-lhe
or the
droga, se
immigration
calhar, no
office.
quarto.
It's the same kind of room there, and you know, and kind of I sat down, and
Aham.
not
Vá
long
lá,
after
estou
that,
curioso.
getting me to hold a board up. They had my phone, they had my luggage, they had my passport. I kept repeatedly asking, can I use my phone to call the Australian Embassy? Can I get my passport back?
Ah, ela é
please?
australiana, ok.
And they repeatedly said, we don't really understand English.
Ai,
And
meu Deus, está lixado.
you know, there's police officers driving up from Phnom Penh, which is a 6-hour drive, and that's kind of where I knew I was in trouble. And when I was holding up the board with everything written in Cambodian, so I don't even know what I'm holding up there.
Ai,
Behind me is
que medo.
people that they've caught for drug smuggling, you know, heroin, methamphetamine, ecstasy, you name it, all photos everywhere. And they're taking photos of me with that behind me.
Mas o que é que ele fez?
You know,
Percebe?
I just kept pleading with them, can I speak to someone? And they were saying either there's no internet connection or they don't understand what I'm asking. And then just sat there for hours and hours with no assistance from them whatsoever. Yeah.
So you were detained at the airport. How soon after that was it that you were taken to a prison?
Well, it's taken them 6 hours to get up there. They've come in. There's 4 police officers. They put me in handcuffs. I'm escorted out of the airport. I was told not to make a scene. They've got machine guns. It's a packed airport. There's people pointing at me, children looking. Everyone's wondering what's going on. You know, I'm being let out in handcuffs with all these. You know, there must have been at least, including the police officers and the guys with the guns and everything else, there must have been at least 10 people. Immigration officers and customs agents and what have you.
Meu
And
Deus.
then gotten put into the back of a police four-wheel drive with the 4 police officers and driven back to Phnom Penh, which is a 6-hour drive with, I think, no water, no food or anything like that. And then put straight into a prison cell.
Sem explicação.
You arrived at that prison. When the doors locked behind you, what did you see? What was your first impression?
Well, I was obviously quite distraught, not knowing what's going on. I was in a cell by myself, just a concrete floor,
Se imagina o medo disto.
and a little toilet, which is a hole in the ground, basically. No toilet paper, nothing like that, and a shower.
Mas prisão para
And
ele
then I think it
próprio.
was the second day that I was there that I spoke to the captain of the police station with a translator, and that's when they tested me for drugs, which all came up negative.
Então, mas ele foi drogado, né? Teoricamente.
And then from there, you know, I spoke to him. I was asking them, can I call the embassy? Can I speak to my ex-partner? I need to contact somebody. You know, I've done nothing wrong. I don't understand what's going on here. And then from that point, I was put back in the cell. Still, I think I was given 1 bottle of water at that stage. And then a loaf of bread, uncut loaf of bread, which I was actually using as a pillow.
You were using a loaf of bread as a pillow to sleep on?
An uncut loaf of bread, yeah.
Wow.
That's all I had.
At this point, did you realise why you were being detained?
No, not really, no. At the
Isto é tenso,
the
pá.
airport, in the immigration office, they showed me, one police officer showed me on his phone the footage of
Tudo
the
multibanco.
Smile Mart and me at the ATM, and you can clearly see the 2 people, shadowy figures out on the outside waiting for me to come out of that Smile Mart. And funnily enough, when that was asked to be produced in court, it had disappeared.
Então, mas o que é que eles queriam fazer? Desculpem pelos anúncios. Não estou a perceber a conexão disto tudo, ainda não estou a perceber.
So you knew at that point that it was something to do with the ATM.
Yeah. They showed me, and I said, yeah, that is me. That's me, obviously, clearly in.
So, but what did they tell you happened to the ATM?
That I damaged the ATM.
So the whole
esse
reason
foi
why
o
you
crime,
were
então.
detained and arrested and put in prison was because you had apparently damaged the ATM screen.
Yeah, I'd fallen into the ATM machine because
Because you'd been spiked.
being drugged, yes. Yeah, and protected my face with one hand and just fell forward and then thought nothing of it because, you know, I was under duress and I've just left. And again, nothing was said as I walked past there the next day.
Okay.
Nothing.
All right. Well, okay. So after that,
Eu não
point,
acredito que
you're
seja
in the
só
prison
isso,
cell. Do you have any idea how long you were meant to be in there for? Had they given you any contact? Had the embassy spoken to you?
No,
Anything?
nothing.
Pois,
I was there for
tu
3 days.
vais parar à
before I
prisão,
got
nem
in
sabes
contact with my
porquê.
ex-partner. 3 days. So if I had died in that police cell, I would have been buried somewhere,
Yeah.
for sure.
So they put you into a police station cell, and then they moved you to a prison later.
Yeah, I went
Ok.
on numerous occasions.
Não tinha
They'd
percebido
take
isso.
you out of the police station, take you to the court, which wasn't far away. That is where you go underground, and then there's about 5 or 6 cells there with, you know, probably 50, 60, 70 people in a cell.
Describe what you were seeing.
Meu
and smelling
Deus,
and hearing.
numa cela 50,
Just
60
people pressed up
pessoas.
against the bars, everyone screaming out for lawyers and other things, and the heat down there was unbearable.
Muito calor lá,
a lot
pois acredito.
of there was a few foreigners, but most of them Cambodians, and then they'd just take you upstairs to the courtroom. You'd go into the courtroom. There'd be 3 judges up there, all talking in Khmer, no translator, and then you'd stand there and you wouldn't know what was going on. You're asked to sign documents with a thumbprint or with red ink. You're signing stuff you couldn't read. It was all in Khmer. They could have said I'd murdered someone or I was a drug dealer or anything like that. I wouldn't have even known. Then put back down into the cell and then taken back to the police station. And that happened day in, day out for the period that I was at the police station. Yeah, taken again the next day and then I think the following day as well. And that's where I first met it was her uncle at first, a lawyer, saying, I'll represent you. But there's so many lawyers just like circling the cells, you know, trying to give cards or come up to you and say, look, I want to help you. Not all of them could speak really great English. And then through him, the uncle, I met Liang, who ended up being my solicitor/lawyer. Yeah.
All right. Well, describe now the moment that you were then put into prison. Like, how long after this whole circus of going in and out the courtroom, did you eventually get taken to the prison?
Okay. Well, it was, again, it's hard to remember, but about 4 or 5 days later, and.
Ok.
The police officers that were saying that they couldn't speak English, I found out that they could, you know. And at this stage, I'd only eaten 1 meal, some rice and a duck egg. And I had a little bit of money on me and gave it to the police officer, and he kind of went and got the food, but never gave me anything back for it. It was a bottle of water, I think, from memory. And then the day that I was taken to the Phnom Penh prison, I think it's Moi Prasal, found out that he could speak English.
Ai,
And
meu
a stone
Deus.
cold look on his face with a wry smile said, you know, we're not a detention centre. He knew where I was headed and he knew what I was in for, basically, after that. So then the next morning they've taken me in the police car and taken me down to the prison.
A prisão que vais
Right, well,
falar
then from
agora.
that moment on, when the doors were locked behind you, what happened? What was your life like from that moment on? What were you seeing? What were the things you were encountering?
Well, when you
Meu
when you get
Deus.
into this prison, the first thing that hits you is the smell and the heat. And then you come up again, like there's a few sets of desks and there's all these guys in uniforms there. You know, they've got your luggage and stuff and they take everything out that they want. and then that luggage, your passport and everything goes to the courts, back to the courts there. They then take you through and strip you down naked in front of everyone and chuck this white powder over you, like a delousing powder, and they give you the orange pants and the orange shirt. Then there was no shoes. I had no shoes, I think, for about a week and a half. Yeah.
So...
And it's like, sorry to interrupt you, but it's like you're walking into a medieval town. When those gates shut, the walls are so high, there's no air getting in. There's guys in turrets sitting with rifles. There's razor wire all the way around the top, and in the top of the walls there's all this broken glass as well, concreted in.
Para eles,
And
para
it's all
não,
like
para não
sections,
fugir.
like blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks, and then laneways throughout these blocks. And the only way I can describe that's like a maze. And you're being handcuffed to the next prisoner, walk through. And then, you know, like you're seeing guys bringing out rubbish in these made rickshaws that they'd made in prison. Just the smell of this, and they're poking it with like metal spikes to see if there's no one in there trying to escape and stuff like that. The sense of, you can smell the sewer. There's rats and things walking around, and other various, you know, things of wildlife like squirrels and things. And you're just being escorted through these mazes, and a lot of people looking at you because you're one of the only foreigners in this chain gang of people. All looking at you, pointing, smiling, again, because they know what you're in for. And then they take you to like these holding cells, which is, I think, 3 or 4 cells. And every cell's probably got about 50 or so people, 50 or 60 people in those cells. And then the next day they shave your head for you know, for head lice and things like that, and they want to hold you in these cells to see that you don't have COVID. They're worried about COVID, but the thing is that there's so many other diseases in this prison that, you know, that's the least of your problems if you get COVID.
Yeah. Well, speak to me about that. You know, what were the kind of diseases? What were the kind of viruses, disgusting things that were?
Well, every sexual transmitted disease that you can imagine is in that prison. From AIDS all the way down, scabies, golden staph, tuberculosis, and then obviously there's COVID in there too, but not in those
60 pessoas dentro de uma cela. Desculpa lá, devia ter sacado o vídeo antes.
And then you sit in those cells, and I didn't sleep for the days that I was in there at all. And you've got an influx of more prisoners coming in, and they just start moving to the next cell. But it was the second night that I saw the first gang rape with a young Cambodian boy.
Será que ele também foi viu?
I managed to find myself up against a wall, which is a rarity, because in there it's like you're sleeping on top of each other. Like there's no room at all, and the heat in there's unbearable.
Mas eu não tinha a noção que existiam prisões deste género.
I wanted to eat, I just couldn't. My anxiety levels, my trauma and stuff were just going through the roof. And still questioning why I'm actually here. Like, it's just overwhelming. You know,
a questão é essa, que ele não sabia porque é que estava aqui.
You know, that evening, and I can't remember the time, but I just remember the poor young guy getting raped by these 2 bigger Cambodian guys in the toilet. He's on the floor, and just hearing the screams and things like that. No one cares and pays attention to any of that. There's a room captain in there who turns a blind eye. Police don't come. Nothing. It just continues and continues.
Deixam isto a acontecer.
And he laid on that floor for a very long time, crying and sobbing, and then people just walking over him on the wet, cold, filthy, rancid floor, peeing, shitting, you know. There's no toilet paper or anything like that. It's just a hole in the floor, you know, just stepping over him while he's just laying there crying. And yeah, it's a terrific experience, and something you know, you're not even prepared to see. You just don't.
Horrific.
You don't, you know, so very traumatic.
I mean, if you're in a very, very overcrowded prison, how many people would have heard that happen and done nothing?
Ouvi-se, claramente.
How many we're talking here?
Well, there'd be 50 or 60 in that cell. You would hear that guy screaming in the next cell. Like I heard people screaming in cells 3 cells down. Maybe it was a beating. Maybe it was something else. You can just hear it, and it's something that you can't forget.
Was this happening at night time?
Yeah. And in those cells too, you're stuck in there 24 hours a day. You don't leave the cell. Food's pretty non-existent. Not that you'd eat it anyway, since rice. They were farming catfish and rice that was full of maggots and stuff like that. And that was it. And I think I got 1 bottle of water given to me in that cell that lasted me a couple
Meu
of
Deus,
days.
este vídeo está-me a deixar muito
And I was
enjoado.
very mindful of that because I didn't know where I was getting any clean drinking water. If you were to have a shower, the buckets would be full of it'd be green water. Like, it's not clean water, you know. And
Meu Deus.
again, yeah, you stay in those cells and then you get moved to the cell beside it because more guys it's just like,
Vão avançando, é
they
isso?
just keep coming in.
It's like a conveyor belt.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And then from there, after a few days, then I got moved to K3, which to describe K3
Okay, cool.
is like a chicken coop, a big chicken coop. And it's not a very big room, but K1, K2, K3, K4. So it's an aluminium roof. There's 1 fan in each. And there's 400 in a cell. 400. And you walk in there, well, when I walked in there was a Nigerian guy and an Indian guy. Thankfully, the Nigerian guy said, come on, sit with me, you know. And the heat in there was unbearable, absolutely unbearable.
Pois.
You know, we're talking about early in the morning, it's pushing nearly 40 degrees and the humidity's up past 90%. So you're constantly just sweating profusely.
Meu Deus.
There's no room at all. Like, you're sitting cross-legged. I
Isto
had the
parece um
Nigerian
inferno
guy,
que ele
I was
me está a
kinda leaning
descrever,
up
meu
against
Deus.
him. He had a wall he was paying for.
He had to pay for a wall?
Yeah, 40 American a month,
Just to do what with the wall?
just to sit against it.
You had to
Tinhas
pay
que pagar
Yeah,
pela
it
wall.
gives you a VIP kind of area where the Chinese guys that were in there or later on, because more people.
Mas isto não é bom sinal, ele ter aceito a ajuda dele. Desculpa, não me levem
So
a
I
mal.
got put over where
Isto vai ainda
when you walk into
não vai
that
correr
room,
bem.
which happens on every room, there's this kind of wooden floor part, and then these couple of stairs and a couple of bathrooms up here that are just filthy. It's absolutely filthy. But the floor I was put on was where you have all the boiling big pots of rice cooking and stuff like that. Then they moved those and I was put on there, so the heat on those floors was unbearable.
Era pior.
And again,
Ainda era pior, pois.
you're just sweating profusely. And you know, guys are going through what little stuff you have. They're stealing it from you. You're watching everywhere. You're trying to watch behind you anytime someone's kind of behind you, because you just don't know whether they're trying to rape you, murder you, steal from you.
Meu Deus do céu.
See, I don't speak Khmer, not one word of Khmer. So I don't know what they're saying. They're all looking and pointing, and they've all got this stone look on their face and they're all smiling.
Pois.
That's one thing I'll never forget, that look.
When people are paying
As campanhas,
access to the
estão
wall,
a acontecer
who's taking that
campanhas,
money?
ok.
The captain of the room, every room has a captain.
Who works for the prison or is an inmate?
And he's an inmate. So he'll
Ah,
serve
é
cigarettes
um
for
recluso
water,
que
the
recebe o
clean drinking
dinheiro.
water that he'll get from
Meu
the shop.
Deus!
Maybe someone might be lucky and get a can of Coca-Cola or something like that.
Ok,
That's
pronto.
how he makes his
Eles
money.
criam
Then he
lá
gives
uma pequena
most of
sociedade.
that money to the guards. They let him do that. He controls the room too. So if there's any kind of
He's the snitch.
well, yeah, but he's also the captain of the room. He's respected. Whatever he says goes.
Snitch não diria, não é? Mas
In
percebo.
K3, you're allowed to go out for 2 hours in the morning and then 1 hour
Ele podia
in
então
the
ser.
afternoon, but you're in there for 21 hours. So if you brought anything from outside, because there are other shops, but then if you wanted to go through to other sections, you had to pay. Usually it was 50,000 real, which is $12.50 American. And if you gave them anything less than that, after you give them 50,000 real, they didn't like that. Some of them were quite brutal about that as well. and then you'd come back into your cell. If you brought anything back with you, he'd take it from you because he wanted you to buy it from him, basically.
Faz sentido.
Aproveite já o Prime Day da
Mais
Amazon.
publicidade.
4 dias de grandes
Desculpa lá,
ofertas
mais uma vez,
com
desculpem pessoal.
Okay. Tell me about the kind of people that were in there. I mean, you're talking about pretty violent people.
Yeah.
What kind of criminals? What
Eu
kind
estou à
of
espera
people were they in
do
there?
título, não é? Que ele foi supostamente 3 vezes. 4.
Child molestation, raping,
O pior que existe. E porquê é que ele foi preso? Porquê é que ele foi preso?
setting up people, drug dealers, you name it, anything you can think of, they're in there for, you know. It's that's the thing. You just don't know and they're all talking Khmer, so you just don't know what they're saying. The Nigerian
Pois ele não
guy
fazia ideia.
that befriended me in K3 there, he could speak a little bit of Khmer. And there was an Indian guy as well.
Eu acho que esse da Nigéria não
Because if you
não sei
start saying
porquê.
stuff about it, just there's repercussions. There's always repercussions. Yeah, but you just don't know who's who in the zoo. You know, I know it's a cliche, but that's true. You just don't know who you're dealing with, and that's coming at you from every angle at all times. You don't sleep, and you can't sleep. Like, you're so hypervigilant about what is in front of you. You know.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of sexual abuse that was happening in there? I don't know what detail you can go into, but I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very shocked to hear the stuff that was happening in that prison. Like, how many
Meu
times did you
Deus.
hear someone being gang raped?
Isso custa mesmo ouvir.
Well, it's hard to tell because they could have been
Já falámos dele, ele já falou disso.
pleading for their life. You just don't know. You hear it so frequently.
Just how many people did you see die in that
11.
prison? 11.
11, yeah. In the 9 months that I was there, 11 people died.
Can you describe some of the instances? Can you describe the specific examples of these 11?
Well, I mean, a lot of guys just got beaten to death in cells. A lot of guys I saw beaten to death in areas, parks and stuff. Guards beating prisoners to death.
Pois, os guardas também, provavelmente.
You know, when I was in the hospital, the Thai guy that came in, because he had
tailandês,
really
esse quer
bad
dizer, né?
gastro, like hadn't eaten in days. He just, you know.
Ok.
So he was brought into the hospital, and then the reason was that he kept using the bathroom, basically, which is just, again, it's a little bathroom, filthy
little
floor
hole.
with a little curtain that's held up with a bit of wire, hole in the ground. And
Também lhes tem uma cortina.
he kept using that, and because he was using the bucket of water to flush the toilet all the time.
Ok. Estava sempre a usar água, ok, percebi.
Because there was 6 main guys in that cell. 2 of them worked for the hospital. Again, there's no doctors in that hospital. It was other inmates doing the surgeries and procedures and things like that. And the whole time I was there, there was never a doctor there. Some doctors would come in with the angio and stuff like that occasionally, once a month.
Espera lá. Eu ouvi isto bem, eu ouvi o que ele disse ou eu entendi mal em inglês? Eram os inmates que faziam as cirurgias. Espera, eu estou parvo. Não estou a acreditar. Deixa-me lá meter isto para trás.
Because there was... Again, there's no doctors in that hospital. It was other inmates
No
doing
doctors? Okay.
surgeries and procedures and things like that. And the whole time I was there was never a doctor there. Some doctors would come in with angio and stuff like that occasionally, once a month maybe. But
Fónix, eu não estou a perceber. Desculpem lá, pessoal.
procedures and things like. And there's no doctors in that hospital.
Deixa-me ouvir.
Inmates doing the surgeries and procedures and things like that. And the whole time I was there was never a doctor there.
Eu não percebi se ele quis dizer que eram outras, que não havia cirurgias simplesmente, ou eram os inmates que faziam cirurgia. Desculpem lá, pessoal, eu estou parvo.
Some doctors would come in with the angio and stuff like that occasionally, once a month maybe. But they were doing like stitching up people with fishing line and whatever else, and amputating people with gangrene. But they had all access to files as well. They had handcuffs in that cell, and they could dish out any punishment they wanted. Like, the guards would come in and say, "We want this guy. punished. If the guards didn't do it, they would tell other prisoners to do that. So what they did to this poor guy was handcuff him up to the
Daquele da água.
back of the cell, and basically take turns of kicking him and punching him and slapping him
Saco box.
repeatedly for over an hour, like beating him to death basically in front of myself. And you want to do something. It was like when I was back in those first cells, I wanted to do something, to help.
Era
But
melhor
you
não
just
fazer.
can't. And you feel really bad.
Pois,
really,
não vale a pena.
Really, really bad. Really plays on my mind about what I saw. That the thing is, you just can't, because you're so scared that it's going to be you next. He was handcuffed there. They kicked the living crap out of him for so long, and he was pleading, please stop, and they just kept going, like an evil game. Look what I can do. And then the next person would take a turn, and the next person would take a turn. And then they finally left him alone, uncuffed him, and he sat in that corner and pissed and shit himself, and in the morning he was dead. Yeah.
Levou porrada.
Yeah, it's horrific to see, and something I'll never probably ever forget.
Meu Deus do céu.
Then meanwhile, in the next cell, you're hearing the same thing going on with some other guy. In the hospital too, there was so many people with mental health problems, where they wouldn't even know. There was guys walking around in the hospital that looked like they'd just come out of a concentration camp. They were so
Pois, é o que parece. É o que eu também estava a pensar.
and people just dying all the time in front of you.
And this is in the hospital?
This is in the hospital, yeah.
People being beaten to death and dying.
Yeah.
Pois, eles não havia controle nenhum, já se
I
percebeu.
was in K3 for 3 months. The majority of the time I was at the hospital because there was less people in the
Mas que é que
hospital.
fazia-
There was
como é que tens para o
me and
hospital?
6 other guys in that room, or six of us in that room, sorry. The whole time we were the main guys in there. And the room captain. So the room captain cooked for all the captains and the hierarchy so he had it pretty good.
But how did you get into the hospital?
I paid $1,000 to get into the hospital, US.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Ah.
Because when I was in K3, I was deteriorating pretty rapidly. I was losing weight really quickly, and because I wasn't eating, I couldn't eat their food. I just couldn't do it. And I knew very early on that if you started getting ill, that's it for you. You'd die.
Não aguentava
Because there's no
depois.
help. None.
Não dá.
And then just going back, when I was in K3, it was about 3 weeks before I even got to see the embassy for the first time. I told them repeatedly, look, this is what's happening here. This is what I've seen. This is the
Ninguém ligou
conditions.
nada.
This is what's going on. And at first I thought, look, I've done nothing wrong. I'm surely you're coming here to get me out of here. And I had a lot of hope at the start, a lot of hope, and just dragged on.
Vai-se
and on
perdendo
and
isso,
on.
vai-se perdendo.
And the more you see, and the more it really has an impact on your mental health, and and you go into dark places, you really do. And then going to the hospital, it was almost worse because because inmates knew that the hospital there was less people. Like the rooms were small, but there was less people. The amount of people that would be in a hospital would change all the time. Like there was 6 cells in the hospital, and there might be 30, 35 guys.
Distribuído
Esta
pelas.
é a Banca do Futuro, onde uma equipa dedicada
passa lá isso
ajuda a
rápido.
proteger o seu dinheiro.
Eram menos pessoas, ao fim e ao cabo. Distribuído 30 a 35 por 6, é isso?
Say 30 guys that come in and out with whatever disease they've got. So you can.
Pois, mas podes não estar doente, tu pagavas, é
Covered in
isso?
scabies, covered in golden staph, laying on a concrete floor. You've got, after a while, you develop these. I don't know if that's calluses, but on your hips, and you're just laying on a concrete floor the whole time with nothing. I was using my t-shirt, or my shirt, that I had.
Como
that
se fosse
they'd given me
almofada.
as a pillow, and the floor's filthy, and you're just covered in it.
Meu Deus.
And guys would come in. But then also the guys would come in because they knew that it was a smaller cell. So you're getting guys that are doing life, that have murdered people. You're getting guys that are so high on drugs that have just come in that need to be sorted out by some medical assistance. But that just doesn't happen. You know, you've got guys that have got, again, seriously mental health issues that would attack someone and then 10 seconds later not even know that they've done it.
Pois.
You know, they would have killed someone and not even know, you know.
Wow. And they're in there for life.
Yeah. Well, some of these guys, they don't even know what to do with them. They're so mentally disabled, they don't even know what to do with them, you know. I
E também ficas assim ao longo do tempo,
been
não
put
é?
in prison because they're homeless. They don't, you know. A lot of guys I've met in there that had stolen a mobile phone, get 3 years, but they've actually got a better life in prison, more they think it is, than being out on the street because they don't know.
Mas não é melhor.
They don't get food
Mas não é
out
melhor
on the
neste
street unless they
caso.
get food inside.
Could you tell me a little bit about the paedophile issue in the prison? What was going on with the paedophiles? What were they doing?
Well, there
Como
was
assim?
many pedophiles in prison. You know, there's an American guy, Danny. He'd been molesting young girls. He'd been living in Cambodia for quite some time and getting away with that, and finally caught, and I think he was in prison for 14 years, something like that. Trying to get out because he was getting older, trying to get a king's pardon. They'd seek that. Another guy I mentioned before, Stefan. The first day he got into the prison, into where those holding cells were, the first day he climbed up onto that roof, jumped straight onto the razor wire and was cut everywhere and was brought in on a rickshaw bleeding everywhere. He was unconscious.
E não trataram dele.
Taken into the hospital and just stitched up like with fishing line or wire, and then brought into our cell. And he,
Meu
you know,
Deus
he's
do
still bleeding
céu.
everywhere. You know, so AIDS, hepatitis, you know,
Pois haveria
everything
mais
can
risco
be
de
transmitted that way.
transmissão,
You know,
pois.
it's like a petri dish, you know, of disease in these cells. And then he's, you know,
Já
started
fico nervoso ao
slowly
ver estas coisas.
getting better, and because there was the 6 of us in there, he started manipulating the 6 because they are master manipulators. That's one thing I did learn about pedophiles. They'll always turn it around onto you and stuff like that.
So this guy that jumped from the roof to try and end his life or escape? He was
and his life.
end his life.
Yeah.
He was a paedophile.
Yeah.
Okay,
Pois
so
ali
all his
naquela
blood-
prisão eles não iam saber.
Jeez.
So he, you know, and that's one of the reasons why you knew straight away that he was guilty. So the NGO's gone round to his house, and I found this out because one of the guys from the hospital could get the charge sheets. So and he could speak a little bit English, not well, but a little bit. I could have a conversation with this guy. And the room captain could speak a little bit English too. So anything they didn't understand, they'd talk to each in Khmer, and then they could kind of get relay it back to me, like, so that I could talk to him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so he'd been caught. The NGO had gone around to his house because he was with this Cambodian woman that had 6 children to 6 different people. She was an ice addict, and he was prostituting. So there was girls and boys. The oldest was 10, the youngest
Meu
was 4.
Deus do céu.
Prostituting them out to men coming around to that house and doing whatever they wanted to do with them and collecting money. And then finally the NGOs cottoned onto this and got around there and
Perceberam?
and got him arrested. But that was going on for months and months and months, you know, before he was detained. Yeah.
And he wasn't even from Cambodia.
No, he's from Switzerland.
So this Swiss guy
He's living in Cambodia.
living in Cambodia.
With this Cambodian woman. She's got
E
6
estava a fazer aquela rede.
And he's like the pimp of these children.
Yeah,
Who he's
basically.
Das 6
renting out
também,
to,
pronto.
I'm guessing maybe other foreigners that might be
Foreigners, yeah. I don't think the Cambodians would kind of go for that thing, but the foreigners definitely.
So he had his connections to Europe, and he can fix up.
Yeah, well,
clients.
there's many Europeans in Cambodia.
They all go there.
Ok.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of the paedophiles
for a
from
lot of for that reason, you know.
Yeah.
And
Meu Deus
so
do
yeah,
céu.
he just had this, I guess, network of guys that were coming around to the house. 4-year-old girls, 5-year-old girls, 5-year-old boys, all the way up to 10. Like, I got a son who was 4 at the time, and I'm having to talk to this guy, ask him questions, and you could tell, like, he would just turn the story back on me. And try and manipulate his way out of it, blaming the NGO, the corruption. Sure, they might be corrupt in areas, but for something like this, there's no way, you know, there's no way. And he'd almost admitted his guilt by trying to kill himself.
Yeah, okay.
He knew he was guilty. You could see it in his face, you know, that he wasn't telling the truth. And he'd always deflect and say, well, mate, you know, you've done something here that's really, really, you're not going to, you know, you're going to be in here a long time, you know, a very long time. He's, no, I'll get my lawyer, I've got a lot of money and stuff like that. And they left him alone because he did have a lot of money coming in. I think his sister was bringing the money in for him because you could get money sent in. There was one shop and a place where you could make phone calls and stuff like that where you'd have to pay. And there was like, just trying to think of the bank's name. The bank, you could get money wired in and they'd give it to you and they'd make money off that too. They were making so much money out of that bank because they were charging prisoners percentages to get money sent in. Which they'd have wired in, and then you'd have to do a code and someone... Like I was lucky enough that I befriended one of the guys in there because I was using the phones. I think I spent, in the first couple of months, then when I did get access to the phones, when I first got some money, so I could move around a bit more freely because I'd be just paying people. $12.50 here, American, $12.50 here, which is 50,000 real, 50,000 real, 50, just to get through the sections. Guards, you know, they'd be taking it. And then it was 50,000 real for 12 minutes on a phone. I'd ring back home to try and organise for her to send money. Sometimes I would speak to my son over the phone. I would try and get in contact with my lawyer to get money sent to her so she could bring the money in or send it through the bank, which is, I'm just trying to think of the bank, the Vadanak Bank, I think it is. You could send it through. Funnily enough, the lady who owned that ATM machine was one of the most wealthiest women in Cambodia. She also owned Vadanak Brewing Company as well. So she wanted me to stay in as long as possible, which my charge could help me up for 3 years. Yeah, it was pretty full on to a situation to be in. Yeah. And as days go on, they sound like a day definitely feels like a week or a month in there because you just...
Acontece tanta coisa.
24/7, you can't
dormes
relax at all. Like your anxiety levels are very high. What the hell am I doing here? How am I going to get out of here? What's going on? Like, you know, you see shows about this stuff. Now I'm going to do it. I'm living this horrible nightmare, and it is a nightmare. You know, and every time I try to help.
Ele teve lá 9 meses, foi 9 meses que ele disse.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some of that a bit later on.
Anúncios, pá. Quantos anúncios é que são?
Tell me about the selling of body parts.
Well, once I started being able to get out of the cell, there was a park they had. It was really beautifully manicured. So when any foreign investment would...
Eu ouvi bem? Venda de partes do corpo?
Come in, could be from anywhere. They'd walk them through the park and show them the manicured, you know, grasses and the farming parts and things like that, so that they would make donations, and things like that. And so the foreigners could get to the park. We'd all stick together, basically. And many times I was told it's us against them. And then we'd see, you know, wealthy guys, Chinese guys and you know, Nigerian guys and Taiwanese guys that, you know, I'd sit with a couple of Nigerians, for example, a couple of Belgian guys, a Filipino guy and so on. And getting back to not just the body parts, the first time that it ever came to my attention, one of the Nigerians guy goes, have you ever seen like a Chinese guy walking out in a police uniform and stuff like that? It's like, yeah, I've seen it a couple of times. What's going on there? So what would happen was this guy might have paid $250,000 because he's obviously being caught for selling, because the Golden Triangle's there, so it's all about heroin and opium and stuff like that. So he's had probably a lot of money. And he might have paid $200,000-$400,000 US to get out. So he's paid the police officers off. Then they've dressed him up as a police officer and walked him out. And there was many conversations about, you know what's waiting for him outside a grave that's already dug. They just shoot him dead, take the money. Then the money just trickles down from the top, which I call a general, because they used to run it like an army, and it just all trickled down to the guards. And so that money be deposited wherever, and then he'd be, and the killing, like the killing fields, you know, they just bury him. And again, you have to imagine too that all these top guys, these generals and stuff like that, used to walk around very proudly in their military outfits with their shiny shoes, their black rimmed hats, with their, you know, they're all ex-Khmer Rouge, so life to them means nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if you don't have money in that prison, it's like you're a piece of litter just blowing in the wind. And then the body parts. So anyone that was quite ill or was beaten to death, they would bring an ambulance.
Estão a fazer lembrar o Squid Game.
The two police officers from the ambulance would be theirs, from just part of the prison, would come in, drive into the hospital. They'd put the body in or the live prisoner in there, and then drive out. And if that guy had been murdered in prison, died of an illness in prison, you know, or was ill, so to speak. I saw guys going out in an ambulance that weren't ill whatsoever, and they would say he'd died on the way to the Russian hospital, which was a hospital outside. So that, you know, there was no paperwork to be filled out. Nothing reflected poorly on the prison, because they were very proud about that. The Cambodians, they don't want they want to save face, you know. And then the discussion was, you know, they're selling organs, and that was definitely I think happening. Yeah.
So you suspect basically what they were doing is they were...
Not just me, most of the foreigners in there were saying kidneys, livers, whatever, to rich Cambodians, rich Chinese guys on the outside that needed body parts.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this could be...
It's a real
This is the first time I've heard this.
Yeah.
This could be...
São sistemas
This
do
could be a
caraças.
breaking news story if we had an investigator actually look into this.
Yeah. I don't know how far you'd get, because it'd get covered up pretty quickly.
Yeah, because the organ
não é
harvesting
verdade.
trade is
Sair
by
antes da
its nature
investigação?
very clandestine. It's done, you know, undercover, essentially. It's not something that people publicise. It's not very easy to make inroads to. But the demand for organs is very high. People are willing to pay a lot of money for it. And so if you got, like you said, the Khmer Rouge running that prison, you just got all these sort of bodies, you know, walking around who haven't got any money to give you, their body is sellable.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. And, you know, like, there's only meant to be 4,500 people in that whole prison. There's over 10,000.
Wow.
Meu Deus.
So when I'm saying these cells are full of K3, for example, 400 people, you are literally sleeping like sardines.
Yeah.
One guy behind you, one guy in front of you.
Yeah.
When you wake up, you're sitting cross-legged. There's a guy here, there's a guy here, there's a guy here.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're lucky enough, you've got a wall that you have to pay for.
Yeah.
In the hospital,
isto ainda me
I
choca.
had a wall because I paid $1,000 US
Pagaste
to
para
get in
estar
there,
lá.
to stay in that hospital. And that's where I stayed until I eventually got out.
See, when I spoke to a guy from China who himself had performed an organ harvest in far western China, and he describes how there were also prison camps there, and how essentially this prison system, again, overcrowded, like what you were saying, was essentially a human organ factory farm.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that's what went on in this
aproveitavam-se.
prison?
Yeah, definitely. They were definitely farming organs.
Pois, e era de pessoas que, como ele estava a dizer, que às vezes nem precisavam, ou que nem precisavam, que nem estavam
Lifestyle,
atrapalhei.
culture, art, business.
que estavam mortas, que não estavam mortas. Ai, estava difícil. Isto é muito forte. Acho este caso muito forte.
I would say 99% I'd be, and it wasn't just me saying it was every other foreign in there going, that's another reason why you don't want to get sick in there, because the hospital's not going to do anything. They'll just get you in that ambulance and take you, and you won't be coming back. And I witnessed a few. There was an Indian guy that was in my cell at one stage. He had, I think it was a cancerous tumour under an arm. He went out and came back.
Tiraram o tumor
At the
depois.
Russian hospital. You didn't want to go to the Russian hospital because that was like, I think it was students performing the main procedures as well.
Tipo teste.
And he came back And he seemed fine, and then he was off again, and we never saw him again. That's just one example. But that thing was that conversation was brought up many times, as were people leaving the prison in police uniforms that had paid money to go. You know,
Only to be shot outside.
yeah, or whatever would
Meu
happen,
Deus.
or they'd probably get released and then caught again,
Yeah.
and then
Depois pagavam para sair ou eram mortos ou
9
depois.
times out of 10 they would have been executed. And one of the reasons this is how barbaric it was, that there was probably 6 cells in the hospital, and then down the other end there was this, one could only call it a torture chamber, with a small cell, with a bed, with all the material ripped off it, just a spring bed there with the car battery stuff.
Para torturar.
Okay, you might need to be a little bit more literal, just in case people didn't catch your drift. Can you explain what
Tinhas
you
uma
mean
sala de
by a wire-frame bed and a car battery?
Yeah, well, the car battery was there, and they'd probably be just electrocuting that guy, torturing him. And you would have heard that. That would have been some of the screams they would have heard in those cells for sure. Yeah, for whatever reason, whatever he's done.
Meu Deus.
There were so many ways they try and mentally break you down. Music in the morning. I think it started around 4 o'clock in the morning. They just blast this music over speakers in Khmer. And that would just every morning
Para acordar.
start, and it would, again, they would, foreigners would just be screaming, turn this music off. It would mentally break people, was turning people
De certeza.
like psychotic every morning. Sometimes they wouldn't let you out of the cells. They'd keep you there all day. It was up to the guard.
Bem, pessoal, 52. O que é que vai acontecer? Eu reagi a um vídeo, e este vídeo é muito grande, tem 2 horas, de facto, 2 horas e 7. Eu reagi agora a esta quase 1 hora, e eu quero saber se vocês querem se ver a parte 2. Eu diria, não vos quero prometer nada, não quero mesmo, não vos quero mentir, porque eu não sei, ainda não vi. O título deste vídeo é que foi Viveu 4 vezes numa prisão no Camboja. Eu não sei se ele vai de facto dizer isso e se vai abordar esse tema. Já foram abordados várias informações aqui que são chocantes. Eu não vos quero prometer nada, mas eu vou reagir a seguir ao resto deste vídeo e só vou lançar se vocês demonstrarem o apoio com o vosso likezinho, porque como eu disse, isto é um teste, um react. Não estou a dizer que vou fazer sempre. Mas se vocês gostarem deste tipo de conteúdo, para além dos meus vídeos também informativos em relação a crimes, que eu vou continuar a fazer, não vou substituir nada por nada, é só um acréscimo, deem um apoiozinho, deem um likezinho e deem um apoiozinho também aí em baixo com o comentário, e quero ouvir a vossa opinião, porque, meu Deus, isto é muito intenso para mim. Eu estava a ver aqui quase 1 hora deste vídeo e já me estou a cansar mentalmente, porque é de facto muito chocante e custa ouvir, de facto. Espero que vocês estejam bem e vemo-nos no próximo vídeo, parte 2. Se vocês demonstrarem o apoiozinho aí do like, vamos tentar chegar aos 100 likes. Ali, se chegarmos aos 80, 90, eu já lanço, está bem? Um grande abraço, até à próxima. Ao Vasco.